We must unite now. We must have one army. We must have one currency. We must have one foreign policy. We must be united.
I ask you, how can Africa have one army? How can Africa have one currency, let alone one foreign policy? I put it to you again. How can Africa ever be united when the very countries that have chosen unity, one policy, one passport, are the ones facing relentless distress, turmoil, coups, and disaster? Wait, have you noticed? Every time an African nation dares to step outside the lines drawn by colonial powers, disaster strikes. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. They've made bold moves to break away from Western influence, and look what's happening. These countries aren't just struggling, they're being torn apart, bit by bit. But here's the real question. Why? Why must those who champion true independence pay the ultimate price?
It gladdens my heart when I see the people of Niger encircling the French military base and daring them, shoot us if you can, but we are not leaving. It gladdens my heart when I see Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso sign a military pact, and I hope that that will be the focal point or the fulcrum around which we'll begin to see an Africa that is new and free.
The Alliance of Sahel States, AES, was supposed to be a beacon of hope. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. Countries united against a history of exploitation. They've created a unified policy and even a biometric passport system to strengthen ties across borders. But guess what? They are met with waves of insurgency, military coups, and chaos. Why does progress in Africa always seem to come at such a devastating cost? What's even more shocking, it's not just the Western powers sabotaging these efforts. Some of the greatest resistance comes from African leaders themselves. Yes, those who should be allies in this fight for true independence are, in many cases, working against their own brothers and sisters. But why? Why would they prefer to uphold foreign interests rather than uplift their own people? Yet again, another attack just this last Tuesday in Bamako. Mali's heart was struck by coordinated attacks, killing at least 70 people. The streets, once bustling with life, were transformed into a war zone as militants attacked elite police training academy and the airport, demonstrating their ability to strike at the heart of Mali's capital. The country is fighting an insurgency that took root over a decade ago in its arid north. The explosions and gunfire sent a stark message to the world. The fight for control over the Sahel has reached new heights. But beneath the surface of these brutal attacks lies a more sinister question. Why is it that every African nation striving to break free from Western influence is met with turmoil, coups, and disaster? It's looking like any African leaders ready to uplift their people must be prepared to sacrifice everything, while corrupt leaders, seemingly protected, thrive in their opulence.
Gunshots were heard early Tuesday morning in several neighborhoods of Bamako in Mali, reports the Reuters agency. It was an attack near an airport and a gendarmerie post, the same source revealed. According to several witnesses, this attack targeted the gendarmerie school in Faladir. Not far from there, gunshots were also heard near a security post towards the National 7. This attack has been denounced, and the situation now under control, several media outlets said, citing the Malian armed forces. For the moment, we have no official note on the identity of the attackers and the toll of this.
The attacks in Mali come just as the newly formed Alliance of Sahel States, AES, between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso takes shape. The junta leaders, Mali's Assimi Goïta, Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traoré, and Niger's Abdourahmane Tiani, have chosen a bold path of defiance against the traditional powers that have long dominated Africa's destiny. Their decisions to sever ties with ECOWAS, a body seen by many as an extension of Western interests, marks a new chapter for the region. But their boldness comes at a price. While it was reported that the killings were carried out by al-Qaeda affiliate, diplomatic and security sources said on Thursday, The government can't offer specific figures on casualties. 2 diplomats serving in the region, including one based in Bamako, said the death toll was believed to be in the 70s. Another diplomat based in the region said hundreds were believed dead and wounded, and hospitals had run out of beds to treat survivors. Since the conflict in Mali erupted, violence has spread to neighbors in the Sahel region and reached the north of coastal countries. Thousands have been unalive and millions displaced in the region. A Malian newspaper reported that funerals for some 50 police cadets were to be held on Thursday. The attack was captured in videos published on social media that showed insurgents setting fire to the presidential jet and dead bodies at the police academy. Gunfire was heard early on Tuesday morning in Mali's capital Bamako that people heading to the mosque for morning prayers turned back as shots rang out. The gunfire started around 5:30 GMT. Some residents said it came from the direction of the airport, while others said it was coming from next to the gendarmerie. A security source said gunfire was heard in several neighborhoods, including areas close to the main Modibo Keita International Airport. Here's what baffles. This conflict isn't about control over territory anymore. No. This is a battle for the soul of Africa. The very fabric of the continent is being ripped apart, and the question we all must ask is, who benefits from this chaos? Is it the jihadists hiding in the shadows, or is there something much deeper, much darker at play? Ibrahim Traoré, young, defiant, and unafraid, stands tall, refusing to bow to pressure. He's severed ties with France, with ECOWAS, and with the old ways of doing things. But while he fights for Burkina Faso's future, other African leaders are allegedly plotting against him, just as Africa's history is stained by betrayal after betrayal. But why? Could it be fear? Or perhaps jealousy that Traoré might succeed where others have failed? The West, of course, has always had its interests in the continent. Natural resources, geopolitical influence, and military positioning are at the heart of why countries like France, the United States, and now even Russia are keen to maintain a foothold in Africa. But why is it that African leaders ready to free their nations from foreign control, like the juntas in the Sahel, face coup after coup? Why do we witness their efforts derailed by insurgencies, whether in Mali, Burkina Faso, or Niger? Is it simply coincidence, or is there a calculated effort to destabilize any nation that dares to resist the status quo? Let's not forget Mali's reliance on Russia. The departure of French forces, the introduction of Wagner mercenaries, the audacity to seek help outside the Western sphere, it's all part of a larger strategy. But is it working? Well, the attacks in Bamako suggest that peace is still far off. So we must ask ourselves, is this new alliance with Russia really in Africa's best interest, or just another chapter in an endless cycle of external influence?
I watched in great pain in Bamako, Mali, young Malians celebrating in the streets that the government of Mali had entered into successful or possible successful negotiation with Wagner, which is a Russian mercenary group, to replace the French. And they are saying how beautiful it is now. And I said, a slave celebrating the departure of one slave master and the arrival of another slave master. That is the state in which we are.
That is how allegedly 14 Ghanaians were said to be deceived into fighting in the RU and UKR conflict, promised security and agriculture jobs. They were instead thrust into the front lines in Ukraine, with 11 already deployed and their fate unknown. The remaining 3 are desperately seeking exemption from the DWR. This incident raises disturbing questions about the recruitment and exploitation of Africans in conflicts. Why are Africans disproportionately affected and represented on the European WAR front lines?
14 young men from Ghana embarked on a journey they believed would change their lives forever. Lured by promises of secure, well-paying jobs in Russia, these men left their families behind with hopes of building a better future. But what was meant to be a life-changing opportunity turned out to be their worst nightmare.
Again, an uncompleted building, and this is one of the buildings they destroyed.
Okay. It all began on Sunday, August 4, 2024, when the men said their goodbyes and boarded a plane filled with dreams of success and providing for their loved ones. They arrived in Russia on August 6 through Togo. Their hearts were filled with anticipation, but from the moment they touched down, things took a chilling turn. Upon arrival, they were whisked off to Kostroma, a city in western Russia, to sign what they thought would be employment contracts. Instead, they found themselves faced with a grim reality. The young men say they were deceived by a contractor who had promised them these opportunities, a man known as Abraham Boachi, popularly known as one-man supporter in Ghana. Abraham, the man they had trusted, now seemed to be their worst enemy.
Abraham Boachi, popularly known as one-man supporter. He brought us here.
Right.
He told us there's a job opportunity over here in Russia, which is security work and then agriculture.
Okay.
So we paid for our own plane ticket and then visa fee. The military people brought us a contract to sign. And then before, he told us that it's a security work, but we'll be trained by the military.
Right.
So when the military people brought the contract, we thought it's the training that they are coming to train us. The contract, we are coming. The day we were signing, he was not around. He was in Moscow.
European WAR front lines. They traveled to RU on 4th August 2024 with the hope of a better life as promised by their Ghanaian contractor, but only for them to be given a military contract to sign allegedly. As at the 16th of September 2024, 5 days ago, 11 of them have been deployed to different WAR fronts, and their fate is unknown. The remaining 3 are begging for them to be spared of the war. The question remains, why must Africans die in their WAR? Wait, I will tell you this. Do you know the UCAR ambassador to Senegal was finding it difficult to recruit the Senegalese youths for their war with Russ? So he put a Facebook post calling on the people of Senegal to join them in their quest. This did not sit down well with the Senegalese government. Senegal has formally warned UCAR to desist from recruiting its citizens as volunteers or mercenaries to fight in its war with Russ. The UCAR ambassador to Senegal was summoned by the Foreign Ministry in Dakar and warned that recruiting Senegalese as volunteers is illegal under Senegalese law, and that UCAR should desist from this practice of recruiting its people through social media. This is the second time in less than 3 months that UCAR's ambassador has been summoned for undermining the laws and sovereignty of Senegal and destabilizing the region. Remember, last month, the same UCAR ambassador was summoned for jubilating over the defeat of some Malian forces by the rebels they opened, confirmed to be backing. You can see that both sides are recruiting Africans for their war. This is not good. Remember the prophecy of Professor Lumumba.
I watched in great pain in Bamako, Mali, young Malians celebrating in the streets that the government of Mali had entered into successful or possible successful negotiation with Wagner, which is a Russian mercenary group, to replace the French. And they are saying how beautiful it is now. And I said, a slave celebrating the departure of one slave master and the arrival of another slave master. That is the state in which we are.
Don't die in their war. It's not worth it. Note, this information has been mostly moped up from the net, and you won't see it in the mainstream media. Among this is why the AES's vision of unity is strong, perhaps the strongest the region has ever seen. The biometric passports that would allow citizens of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to travel freely between their nations. A simple, yet powerful move to forge unity in a region long divided by colonial borders and influenced by foreign interests. Yet this effort, too, has met with resistance, not just from external powers, but from African leaders still tied to ECOWAS and, by extension, to Western ideologies. So what does this tell us about the future of African cooperation? Will African nations continue to be divided and conquered, or will leaders like Traoré be the spark that ignites true unity across the continent? In the midst of all this, the people of the Sahel continue to suffer. Thousands have been unalive, millions displaced. Yet the resilience of these populations is nothing short of remarkable. They continue to fight, not just for survival, but for a future free from exploitation, a future where African leaders can finally govern without foreign interference. It's a fight for the future. And now, the question is yours. What will it take for Africa to break free from the shadows that have haunted it for centuries?
I'm very worried, obviously, for especially Ibrahim Traoré, but all of the leaders in the Sahel. I'm very worried for them, and these leaders need to be protected at all costs. These leaders of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and Senegal need to be protected at all costs. And I wish that there were some practical steps that I personally could take to try to see to their protection and to emphasize to the Muslims, not just in Africa, but like in the Khalij, in the Gulf, in Turkey, and here in this region, in the Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, these regions. Everybody needs to send someone over there just for protection, and not just like literally bodyguards, but I mean to absolutely show 100% solidarity with these people, to say if something happens to them, there will be consequences. We are standing with them, we're standing by them, and their project and what they're starting. We're with them 100%, and we're not going to let anything happen to these men. I really pray for their safety.